Well, good evening once again, Vertical Reality. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. Welcome again to another Tuesday night live stream. I know we've been here for quite a while now, and so for those of you guys who've been watching faithfully, who've been following along, who've been in the reading plan every day, every week, keeping along with us, we just want to thank you guys so much. And we know these are difficult times for everybody, and it's oftentimes nowadays hard to stay connected. And so for those of you guys who are doing that, we just want to thank you so much for being a part of the VR online community for now. No news yet to report on when we are going to be returning to normal Wednesday services, but as soon as we do have any information and as soon as we have any additional protocols for you guys for a normal Wednesday service, we will absolutely get that to you. So stay tuned to the VR Facebook page, to Snapchat, to Twitter, to Instagram, to all that good stuff, and look for your news there. So tonight we're going to get right into things, and I want to start off by telling you guys about one absolutely crazy weekend that I have had, and not necessarily in a good way. So last Friday, my wife and I went camping. We went to Darien Lake State Park, and we went camping with some friends and her parents because it was her birthday on Saturday. So, baby, when you're watching this, happy birthday, belated birthday, even though I've told you 1,000 times since Saturday. So we're going on this camping trip, and we take our camper, we load it up, we go out to the Darien Lake State Park, and we show up, check in just like normal, and we get to the site, and it's kind of on a bit of an incline. Not really great for a camper if you guys have ever gone camping in one before. So we back the camper up, and it's a little difficult. It's kind of a tight turn to get in there, and the guy right across the street, kind of kitty corner from us, his truck is parked like way too close to the road, so it made it difficult for me trying to maneuver our camper around him and then into the site. But we managed to do it, and I backed the camper up. And, it takes a little bit longer than normal, and it's very frustrating backing up a trailer. So we get we get the camper into the site. I get out and I start to unload the camper and get it all set, and it dawns on me that I never filled up the camper with water. And we don't have any water hookups, and so if you don't have water hookups, you need to fill up the fresh water tank, and I didn't do that. So I had to re-hook up the camper, put everything back that I had just taken out, and my wife and our dog Cade got out of the car, and they stayed on the side, and I had to pull the camper all the way around the whole campsite, back around to a water spigot, fill up the water, the fresh water tank. It's all full, good to go, close everything back up. It was a little easier the second time back in the camper because I'd already done it once, so I had a good path, kind of mapped out. So I pull the truck up, pull it back, get our camper in the site, and then we run into the problem, like I just said, where the site is on a pretty big hill. So we pull it as far back as we can, and we get it leveled left to right, and then I start to unload it, so we get it leveled left to right, I get it off the truck, and then I start to raise it up to get it leveled front to back. For those of you guys who have never gone camping in a camper, have never had to deal with one before, keeping a level camper is very important. So A, so you don't roll down the hill. B, so the water level on all of your tanks is even, and then also two, you just don't want to be walking around an uneven camper for the whole weekend, because then you got stuff rolling off of countertops and all that drawers that fly open or slam shut, and so it's not a good thing. You always want your camper to be level. So we go to level it front to back, and I take the camper up all the way to the very top, and we're not even close to level. And it's a nightmare. It's 96 degrees outside. There's no shade around. We are about 45 minutes to an hour in at this point trying to get this camper set up, trying to rush through things to get things done, and it's just not working out. So I decided the best thing to do was to hook the camper back up to the truck, to pull the truck further forward, closer to the road in the campsite, and then try to set the camper back up, and hopefully it was going to be more level down closer to the road, down the hill a bit. So I pull the truck up, we reconnect to the truck, I put everything back in the camper, we pulled the camper up, and then I level it, left to right, start to get it off the truck, and my wife Christy is just pouring sweat. She is super warm because she's standing out in the sun this whole time with the dog, and the dog doesn't have any water. He's panting, he's overheated. So she asks me if I can get the electric hooked up so we can get the slide out and turn the air conditioning on. So I say, yeah, of course. So I drop the stuff, I go and hook up the electric, she pulls the slide out, starts the air conditioning, and then I go around, continuing to do stuff. I get it disconnected from the truck. I go to raise the front end of the camper only to realize that I never put the wheel chocks on. And the wheel chocks are the mechanism that locks the wheels in place so the camper doesn't move. So luckily at this point, the truck wasn't very far away from the camper, and my wife and the dog had already left the camper. But I raised the camper up a second time now, and it starts to move forward at me, and it moves a good foot and a half towards me, and I'm standing between the truck and the camper. The camper's rolling down the hill towards me, and it stops itself on one of the leveling blocks. Thank God that it was there, and there was no real damage to the truck at all. There was no damage to me, no damage to the camper, but it was a very scary moment. And at that point, we kind of froze. My heart's pounding out of my chest. I go and I get the chocks on, hook everything up, and then we try to level it one last time, and once again, we're not even close. And at this point, we're 2 hours in. We've been wrestling with this camper for, the entire time since we've been there. We haven't had any success getting it hooked up, and I decided, there's just no way we can stay at this campsite. We need to see if they have something else. So I get in the truck. I go back up to the check-in area. I talk to one of the employees, and I say, man, listen, my wife and I got here at 12:30. It is now almost 3 o'clock. We've been at this for over 2 hours trying to get our camper to work in this site, and it's just not working. Nothing's leveled. We've had a near disaster. We need a new site. And she says, oh my gosh, I saw you guys come in, almost 3 hours ago now, and I knew as soon as you guys came through, I said right out loud that they're going to come back and ask for a new site. And I was like, what do you mean? She says, well, I've worked here for 2 years, and in the 2 years that I've been here, I have never once seen anybody camp at that site. That is the worst site that we've ever had, that we have on the whole site. And I said, so you mean to tell me that it's been 2 hours and we were wrestling with this camper the whole time, and you knew that it was a bad site and you didn't say anything? At least that's what I was thinking. So I thought, oh man. So we finally get a new site, and the weekend goes on, and that's all well and good. We come back on Sunday, we start unpacking, and then as we're unpacking, our neighbor walks up to us, and he says, we've been trying to find a way to get a hold of you all weekend. We couldn't reach you guys. We said, well, what happened? And they said, oh, well, while you were gone across the street here, that guy's transformer exploded, and the electrical transformer up on the utility pole in his backyard, 100 feet just outside this wall here. They said, yeah, his transformer exploded, and it was on fire for an hour and a half before the fire department was able to put it out. And he said, and then the next day, the electrical cable that connects to your house, it snapped in your neighbor's backyard. And you guys didn't have power for 12 hours. And so the fire department was here, and we were trying to get a hold of you guys because they had to pull a new electric cable, and we didn't know how to reach you. We knew that you were out camping. And so he tells us all this once we get back, and we were just thinking to ourselves, what the heck happened while we were gone this weekend? I absolutely couldn't believe, just seemed like one thing after another. First the camper at the campsite, and then we get back, and there was 2 electrical near fires right next to our house. So I woke up this morning, on Monday morning as I'm recording this, and I think to myself, Monday's got to be better, right? It's a new day. Monday has got to be a better day. So I wake up and I go into work, and before I even get to work, I get a phone call from one of our electricians, and he tells me that one of his meters isn't working, and so I have to try to figure that out. So I'm on the phone with him for a little while trying to figure some stuff out, and we finally get a working solution, and so he goes and does his thing, and so I get my bags out of the truck, go to get into the office trailer at the job site, and as soon as I walk in, there's two more electricians there, and there's an order that needs to be placed like right away because the guys ran out of water on Friday because it was so hot. So there's another thing that I have to do. So I go to hook up my laptop and everything, and I realize that there's no electricity in the trailer. So I go outside to check the generator, and the generator's there, but there's no gas. I think, all right, great. So I got to fill up this generator with gas. So I go inside and I ask one of the electricians, and I say, hey, do you know if we have any gas? I said, no, actually, we just sent a guy over to the gas station to get it. So I was like, all right, well, I just got to wait for him to get back so I can fill the generator up and get some gas. And the whole time while I'm waiting, work is just piling up and piling up. So the other guy comes back with the gas. I get it. I fill up the generator. I go to turn it on this morning, and nothing happens. And I think, what the heck is going on? So I look into it a little bit more, and turns out whoever disconnected the generator on Friday while I wasn't there had left it in the on position and drained the battery the entire weekend. And so I went to go turn it on today, and the battery's dead. So I had to pull the generator around, hook it up to one of the electrician's cars. We had to jump the generator, and then finally got it working, and then way longer than I wanted it to be into my day. I finally got to work and was able to catch up on some emails, and it was in that moment after such a crazy weekend, after all the snafu on Friday with the camper, and then the crazy news on Sunday when we came back about losing power for so long, and then walking in on Monday and just having another thing go wrong, and all I could think about was like, I just cannot catch a break this weekend. And I kid you not, it was right at the moment when I was thinking that an alert goes off on my phone. And it was the YouVersion app, and it was the verse of the day from the YouVersion app. And so I lean over and I look at the YouVersion app to see what the verse of the day is, and it's Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. I'm going to be reading it to you through the NIV. I'm pulling it up right now as we speak. Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. And this is what Jesus has to say here. Letters in red if you're reading from your actual Bible, and even if you're on the YouVersion app, it should still be letters in red because it's Jesus speaking here. This is what he says. It says, Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul and with all of your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." And so this alert comes off on my phone as I'm thinking that I cannot catch a break. And I lean over and I read those verses, and I think to myself, God, what does this have to do with anything? And that's all that could come to mind as I read this verses. What does this have to do with anything right now, God? I was like, I'm stressed out, and I've got all this stuff going wrong. I cannot catch a break. I feel like I'm treading water in the middle of the ocean right now. Nothing is going right. What does this possibly have to do with my situation right now? And as soon as that thought crossed my mind, another thought came right behind it. And I swear the second thought was the Holy Spirit. And this is what I believe God said to me in that moment. As soon as that first thought of just helplessness and what the heck does this have to do with anything, the second thought came through, and God said, the commandment to love doesn't change when things get hard. And I kind of stopped for a moment, and I started to reflect on all of the individual moments that I had over this past weekend, all of the things that were sources of stress and sources of frustration to me. And I began to realize that I had allowed those situations, those moments, to kind of eclipse a greater mission that we have, to kind of change my perspective in the moment and take it off of what's most important, which is loving others, the commandment that Jesus gives us. And I got so fixated on the moment that I was completely rendered useless in those moments as far as loving is concerned, because I was so focused on the source of frustration. And so before we close here, before we wrap things up, I want to give you 4 practical applications that I learned today as I kind of reflected on that verse, that I hope that you guys can take away from my series of unfortunate events that I began this stream with, and to be able to take away from that experience, reading that verse in Matthew 22, to be able to apply to your own lives when things take a turn for the worst. And so these 4 points are going to follow the acronym PRAY. And I did that obviously on purpose, because first and foremost, when we're going through situations that are difficult or stressful or frustrating or just make you want to punch a hole in the drywall, what we should always do is pray and just ask for God to be with us. Just ask for his peace and his patience. And more than anything, praying just gives us a moment to fix our eyes on what's most important in the moment and not on what's most pressing in the moment. So 4 points, they follow the acronym PRAY. The P in PRAY is practice prepares you for the moment. Train your spirit before the game. What do I mean by that? I mean that when things get difficult, your knee-jerk reaction is oftentimes going to be the thing that you have trained yourself to do. Or it's going to be the thing that you do because you never trained yourself. If you practice with little frustrations every day, say that you get angry, and when you get angry, you're just very likely to lash out at somebody. So when a frustrating situation comes up, you're more than likely, and it's not going to be a surprise if you lash out on somebody. But if you know that that's a weakness of yours, and while you're not angry, you do things like practice saying nice things to other people, and then when little frustrations come up, you take a very intentional approach on being kind to other people and to not put yourself in a situation where you're going to lash out, or to not allow yourself to say those things, then when big frustrations pop up, you're more than likely going to catch yourself before you lash out at somebody. All I could think about is an NBA player before they take a free throw in a game. They take hundreds, if not thousands, of free throws in practice. And they stand there and they shoot and they shoot and they shoot and they shoot. And every day their percentage grows and grows and grows. Because one day, when they're in the big game, maybe in the NBA Finals, and they have a free throw to take the lead at the end of the game, and there's so much pressure on that moment, for somebody like a LeBron James or like a Michael Jordan, who in those instances had taken those shots thousands of times before, it's just muscle memory. They just go up to the line, they dribble the ball a few times, and they just take their shot like they always do. And the same goes with our spirit. If we are intentional on practicing our response to situations spiritually, then when the moment comes, we will play just like we practice. Next point is the R in pray. And the R stands for readjust your focus. Take a moment, breathe, and remember what is most important. And this is kind of the whole point of praying, is praying allows you to take a moment to readjust your focus, to take a deep breath. And then the last thing that I said on that point is to remember what's most important. I think that is what's most important. Because when we get frustrated, we fixate our eyes on something that's just so small and unimportant that it takes our eyes off of the greater commandment, which is to love other people. It might seem crazy, but you can be angry and still love people. You can be frustrated and still love people. You can be wrapped up in the moment and still fixated on what's most important, which is Jesus' commandment to us to put others before ourselves. And so when we pray, when we take a moment and breathe, it allows us to realize, okay, that what I'm experiencing right now isn't long term. It's not really important. Yeah, it's frustrating, but I'm going to get through this. But what's more important now is what I'm about to say and how it's going to affect somebody tomorrow, or what I'm about to do and how it's going to affect somebody tomorrow. And that leads us on to our next point, which is the A in pray. The third point is always remember that everyone you meet is fighting their own battles. Luckily I did not act this way, but it would have been so easy for me after my wife and I had just wrestled with the camper for over 2 hours in the 96-degree heat and the direct sunlight. When I went back up to that check-in station to absolutely rip that employee a new one for letting us go to this site, which she knew it was a terrible site. But everybody that we meet is fighting their own battles internally that we know nothing about and we cannot see. You are, and I am, and everybody you meet is. And so you might be having a bad day, but there's other things that they struggle with too, and maybe they're not having a bad day, but something that you say can cause them to have a bad day. Or they might be in the middle of the fight of their life, and you come along and you just don't help the situation at all. But with Jesus' commandment to love our neighbors as ourselves is to put our neighbor before ourselves. So even when we are frustrated, even if the source of our frustration is because somebody did something wrong or somebody did something that unintentionally that affected us, and you might think that you have every right to be angry. But even still, that person's struggling too. And so instead, in the moment, practice empathy, practice kindness and patience, and be a source of peace, not a source of division. So when you approach people and in your anger, remember everybody's fighting their own battles. And the last point we have, the why in pray, is you have the choice to react or respond. So ask yourself the question, who's in control? And that's the major point about reactions and responses. A response is the ability that you have to respond to, and I'll respond, but the ability that you have is to respond to the situation, not react to the situation. A response is a cognitive choice, an intentional decision to act a certain way, whereas a response is just a reaction is just a knee-jerk reaction. There's no better word for it. It's just a knee-jerk reaction to a situation that you just fly off the handle. And the question is who's in control, because when you respond, you're in control. When you respond, you are the one who's in the driver's seat. You get to choose to be angry, or you get to choose to be a source of peace. You get to choose to be kind. Whereas a reaction, you're not in control, but the situation is in control of you, or your anger is in control of you. And so you react to a situation, and there's no thought process to it. There's no intentionality. There's no decision. You just make a snap decision, and oftentimes that's what leads to the most devastating interactions in our lives, and some of the most devastating situations is when you don't think before you speak, or you don't think before you act. And so the why in pray is you have the choice to react or respond. So respond to those situations in kindness and in love. So that tonight VR is all that I have for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We will see you next week, Tuesday. And before you go, please check the comments below and follow that link to the reading plan that we are going to be going through this week. We love you guys so much, and thank you. See you next week.